Part 54. The Brave Life of a Space Peasant Girl. Author, Lan Department. Chapter 531. Chapter 531 Found. Rescue the eldest brother first, and if they alarm the old man, what will happen if he gets angry and kills the two treasures? You must find two treasures first. Master, try it. Zyja has fused the fragment from that person and is familiar with his origin and said. Okay, look for her quickly. Yuan was overjoyed. She could still keep her composure and didn't show any signs of it on her face. Look for the gate immediately. Don't lose your temper. When Lord God came in after making arrangements, he saw Yuan sitting on the ground as usual, looking irritable. Tell me about what happened back then? Who killed me? You can take me to get revenge or something, Yuan said to the Lord God calmly. Damn it, I have to find something for him to do, distract him. Why did he keep staring at her? The Lord God looked at Yuan with a faint look in his eyes. Did Ziwei know something? He was the one who took that fatal slap back then, and he didn't want to kill her, but she made him angry. It's me. Lord God said these two words lightly. He wanted to see what Ziwei could do to him. Yuan was surprised. Didn't this guy say he liked her? How could he kill her? Aren't you angry? Lord God was a little surprised that Ziwei was not angry. Angry? Yuan looked at this iron barrel-like room and him, the Lord of all realms. There was no point in getting angry, and she had nothing to do. Let alone revenge. Even plucking out a hair on his head will not do it. You have some self-awareness. In the past, Ziwei, maybe I could use you as my opponent, but now the Lord God shook his head, his cold face full of disdain. Give her 1,000,000 years and she won't be able to reach her previous heights. After 1,000,000 years, he should be tired of her. At that time, I sent her anywhere. How could she survive? The expression in the Lord God's eyes deeply hurt Yuan's heart. She lowered her eyelids and clenched her fists tightly. There was nothing she could do today, but she would definitely take revenge in the future. How could her expression escape the consciousness of Lord God? He just smiled contemptuously and sent her to a place with a wave of his hand. Yuan didn't feel anything at all. When he saw clearly, he had changed the place. The spiritual energy here was so thick that it turned into rain. It is richer than the aura in her space. Practice well here and strive to become an immortal as soon as possible. The day when you become an immortal is the day when you and I get married. Don't think about playing tricks. If you don't become an immortal within 100 days, the Lord God will send someone to the underworld. The Lord God's cold words made Yuan's heart feel cold. This old man's shamelessness has reached another level. Yuan did not respond. She just sat cross-legged on the ground, waiting for the response from the boundary gate. It has not been found after so long, so it must be hidden very well. After the Lord God returned, he sat in his bedroom, the same place where Yuan was imprisoned. He waved his hand, and all the artifacts scattered on the ground returned to their places. Then I closed my eyes and rested my mind. I liked Yuan, but he was the Lord God. No one dared to challenge his authority and must comply with his requirements. At this time, Yu Heiran and the others who were in the small world were still in shock. They captured them all at once and put them in this place. Such a stroke of genius was not something that the Mahayana monks in the spiritual world could do. There is a chance among them to offend monks above the Mahayana stage, except for Xiao Ser and Mujukan. But he did not kill them. I think the purpose of this person was to use them to blackmail Xiao Ser and the others. Yu Heiran wanted to understand all this and immediately asked everyone to take out all the things from Juya Trading Company, and then everyone would seize the time to practice. This is a space similar to Xiao Ser's, but the space inside is not spiritual energy, so they have to rely on spiritual stones and elixirs for their cultivation. Fortunately, after eating the fruit that Xiao Ser gave them to transform their bodies, they didn't feel uncomfortable about the power inside it. Everyone knew their situation and went to retreat to practice. Even Xiao Lu, who had never liked practicing, started practicing seriously. Yuan waited for a whole day but still didn't get a reply from the realm gate. She had to start practicing. What if the realm gate couldn't find the two treasures? So Yuan made two preparations, and at the same time, her spiritual consciousness entered the space and told Mujukan not to worry and concentrate on improving his strength. As for the Lord God's intention to forcefully marry her, she didn't say a word about the Lord God. Telling him this would only increase his worries. With Mujukan's temperament, he didn't know what he would do. Yuan's cultivation was already close to breaking through the integration stage. 5 days later, she broke through the integration stage. As long as the Lord God is here, even if there is no thunderstorm, there will be thunderstorms. After consolidating his cultivation, Yuan concentrated on practicing again. The Lord God in the shrine saw Yuan's breakthrough, and there was a smile on his cold face. This trick really works. Just thinking that her efforts were not for him made the little person in Lord God's heart feel uncomfortable again, and his face returned to being as cold as ice. 10 days passed like this, and Yuan's cultivation reached the middle stage of integration. With such a rapid advancement, her cultivation was not frivolous at all, but was still very solid. She didn't know that the aura here had been tempered by Lord Shangshen, and even if she was directly promoted to human immortal, it wouldn't be vain. His Majesty God saw that her body had been tempered, otherwise her immortal body would not be able to withstand the power of His Majesty God. To avoid extraneous problems, the Lord God will set it in the human immortal stage, which is enough. Yuan's cultivation level improved as easily as drinking water, but the Jimin's delay in finding the two treasures made her more and more worried. You won't let that old man be killed, right? With such random thoughts, she became less interested in practicing, and her cultivation also slowed down. In a blink of an eye, there are still 10 days left before 100 days. Yuan's cultivation has stagnated in the late Mahayana period. Master, Master, I found it at this moment. There was a sound of surprise from the boundary gate. Master, the situation of the two young masters is not very good. You must be mentally prepared, Jimin said again. It's okay, as long as they are still alive. Yuan breathed a sigh of relief. As long as she was alive, she could think of a way. Okay, then Xiaja will take you there. Okay. Yuan immediately controlled the realm gate with her consciousness and came to the place where the two treasures were imprisoned. When she saw the miserable condition of the two treasures, Yuan almost went crazy. She quickly took the two treasures back to their space and asked Mujukan to heal their injuries. She also picked 2 soul-washing flowers and gave them to Mujukan. Mujukan, take care of your son first. I have to go and take Grandpa and the others into the space immediately. Okay, go quickly. Mujukan estimated that they were also arrested, but he didn't know who was arrested, but he remembered the revenge, and no matter who it was, he had to avenge it. His son, he couldn't bear to touch with a finger. This man ruined their cultivation, not to mention all the meridians were shattered, and even the soul was damaged. Without the treasures in Wana's space, curing them would be useless. End of this chapter. The Brave Life of a Space Peasant Girl. Author, Lan Department. Chapter 532. Chapter 532 Peace of Mind. When Yuan found Yuhairan and the others, she did not go over or disturb them. Unknowingly, all of them returned to the space. Yuan from those merchants did not accept it, and will not use it in the future, so I will leave it as a souvenir to the Lord God. After everyone returned to the space safely, Yuan hurriedly escaped and returned to the space. How long would it take if he didn't leave now? Before disappearing, she raised her little finger in the air, and I will make you mad. Entering the space, Yuan didn't waste any time and asked the world gate to take her to a secret realm. At the same time, Master Shangshen saw Yuan provoking him and disappeared in the blink of an eye. He quickly closed the space, but still did not stop him. Ziwei, you're doing well. The Lord God was furious and smashed the artifacts in the dormitory to pieces. What other treasures does she have on her body? Ziwei, next time you fall into the hands of this Lord God, I want you to look good. After the Lord God vented his anger, he checked the two treasures and the small world with his consciousness, and sure enough, there was no one left. Ha ha Ziwei, save those two scoundrels and see if you can cure them, ha ha ha, don't even think about it. Thinking of this, he immediately issued a divine order to destroy all the living flowers and soul-washing flowers in the world, any treasure that could help repair the Danshan and the soul. He wanted to see what Ziwei could do to repair those two evil creatures. The four emperors didn't know why the Lord God was so angry, but they didn't dare not accept this divine order, and then sent it to all realms. The heavens in every realm were stunned when they received such a divine order, but the Lord God's divine order had to be carried out. In an instant, the treasures of repairing Danshan and repairing souls in all realms disappeared silently. At this time in the space, Yuan told everyone the general situation and told them not to worry and just concentrate on their cultivation. After that, she had time to see her son. Liangbao has not woken up yet. The meridians in his body have been repaired, his soul is being repaired, and his Danshan has also recovered. Same spiritual root as before, but thicker than before. Yuan let out a long sigh of relief. Waner, are you okay? Mujukan held her in his arms and stroked her face distressedly. It's nothing, you haven't seen that my cultivation level has improved so much. Yuan nestled in his arms and smelled his breath, which made her feel at ease. Only in the arms of this man can she feel at ease. Now people are safe, but it is still a problem for you Heiran and the others to survive the disaster. As long as you go out, you will be arrested. Well, troubles come one after another. She can't help it. It would be great if there was another world for cultivating immortals, Yuan sighed in her heart. Master, do you want to go to another world of cultivating immortals? Jimin suddenly asked her. Yes, can you find Xiaja? Yuan became more energetic. Of course I can. I don't belong to this world of cultivating immortals in the first place. I came here unintentionally. But I have to find the remaining fragments so that I can fully recover. That's it, let's look for it quickly. Isn't it true that there are thousands of worlds? Let's look for them one by one with hope. Yuan suddenly felt better. Mujukan felt the change in her mood and asked, what's wrong with Waner? Yuan, Xiaja just told me that there is another world of cultivating immortals. It said it can take us there, but we have to find its remaining fragments. Oh, Mujukan was also quite surprised. He was still in the middle of this world of cultivating immortals. He also heard that there was another world of cultivating immortals. Why shouldn't he be surprised? In this case, they can leave here completely. Then you keep an eye on your son here while Xiaja and I go look for him. Okay, go ahead. Mujukan nodded and kissed her on the forehead before letting her go. Yuan came to the training room as soon as her consciousness moved. She immediately controlled the world gate and began to search, even the mortal world like the Great Yan Empire was not spared. She was very lucky, and she really found a peace in the mortal world. This time she didn't need to go out through the gate. The piece appeared in her hand as soon as her consciousness moved in the space. This piece of fragment is only the size of a little finger, and the whole body has no power at all. She looked at the mortal world, and there was still a hint of divine power floating in the air, and the plants where the fragments were originally had some divine power. Yuan did not touch those, which is considered a blessing to this world. It only depends on which people and animals can eat those plants with magical power. Not to mention immortality after eating it, there is still no problem for those who live to be over 1000 years old or 800 years old. Yuan allowed the realm gates to merge quickly. This time it took half a month for the realm gate to be integrated. In fact, all the divine power on that piece was gone, and it took some time for the realm gate to be integrated. The merged realm gate is golden, eye-catching, and beautiful. Yuan looked at it and saw that there was still the last corner left, so the master and servant began to search again. The speed and sensitivity of the boundary gate have increased a lot after the fusion, and the search speed has been accelerated a bit. It is like a scanner, scanning a boundary to know whether it is there or not. This time I am looking for a piece in a secret realm. After the fusion of the world gate, there is still a small corner left. Last time, it took a long time. I found it in the sea of a big world. Although it took a long time, I finally found all the fragments of the world gate. The master and the servant were excited for a long time. After the boundary gates were integrated, a complete gate appeared in front of Yuan. Master, the gate shook a few times and turned into a little blonde girl standing in front of Yuan. Small world. She thought the gate was male. Master, why are you so surprised? Our weapon spirits can choose to become male and female. Oh, girls are good, girls are good, I am the master's daughter. It just so happens that the master does not have a daughter yet. Yuan laughed. Xiaoji turned into a girl. She was so beautiful, with beautiful facial features, and long golden curly hair hanging down to her vest. Wearing a fairy skirt and a pair of golden boots. Like an elf, Yuan fell in love with Xiaoji at first sight. Xiaoji gave her master a white look. Although she was physically like a child, her actual age was that of the ancestor of her master's ancestors. It was not an exaggeration. Also be her daughter. Think beautifully. Master, you don't remember anything about the past. Xiaoji was stunned for a moment when her words changed. Then she shook her head and said, I don't remember. It's better if you don't remember. Come back for revenge when you become stronger. She also wanted to come back for revenge, and she was broken into pieces. That's necessary. I'm weak now, but we can. Yuan winked at Xiaoji. Xiaoji understood in a second, and immediately recovered herself, taking her to the Lord God's palace. Huh? That old man collected all the things. What a pity. Yuan saw that there were no artifacts placed in the room before, and sighed to herself that this old man was very naughty. He was worried that she would come back to steal them. How did she know that it was the Lord God who had all been smashed? End of this chapter. You are listening to novels at Bless Up channel. Wish you happiness and luck. Please subscribe to receive new novels. How do you feel about this novel? Please like and leave a comment. The Brave Life of a Space Peasant Girl. Author, Lan Department. Chapter 533. Chapter 533. The Lord God is angry. Yuan pouted and asked Xiaoji to search again. When he came, he had to tell him that I was here for a visit. Damn it, you need to collect some interest first. Xiaoji searched around and found the Lord God. He was standing on a high mountain, with his hands behind his back, and he didn't know what he was looking at. Master, let's take away his storage space. Xiaoji really couldn't find Lord God's treasures, so he must have kept them all. Yuan curled her lips. Xiaoji didn't need her to train him, but he had the same thoughts as hers. She said, okay. So Xiaoji adjusted the picture by himself, and the Lord God's slender hands clearly appeared in front of Yuan. Oh my gosh, these hands are so beautiful. This old man's skin is still good looking, but compared with Mujukan, her husband is still as good looking as her husband. Yuan is just a nymphomaniac for a short period of time. Women naturally love beautiful things, so you can't blame her. When she saw that Lord God really had 3 storage spaces in his hand, her consciousness moved, and the storage spaces in Lord God's hand disappeared, and when they reappeared, they were already in her hands. Xiaoji, let's go quickly. When you get something, you will definitely run away as soon as possible. Good master. Xiaoji knew that the master had succeeded and headed towards another world of cultivating immortals to search for him. Master, are you going to the spirit world first? Well, Be quick. Good. Shush, after the gate shook a few times, a world appeared on the opposite side, and Yuan entered there without hesitation. Haha, I finally left. Yuan stepped out of the space and breathed in the spiritual energy here. Well, it was much richer than the spiritual energy in the Lingxi realm. She quickly found a place to move Yu Heiran and others out to survive the disaster. On the other side, Lord God stood for a long time. He hoped that Yuan would come to him on his own initiative and beg him, but he had not seen her in these days. He felt empty in his heart, so he came here to be quiet. At this time, he habitually used his thumb to rub the storage space on his fingers, but this time the place he touched was empty. The Lord God spread out his hands, and there was a storage ring in his hand. Damn it! The Lord God became angry and waved his hand, turning the highest mountain in the God realm into powder. The power then spread. Wherever it went, birds and beasts flew in disorder, mountains collapsed and the ground cracked, cities collapsed, the sea churned, and people flipped over. For a moment, the God realm seemed to tremble, and within 10 breaths, the God realm became on earth. How many low-level creatures were destroyed by the Lord God's swipe? At the same time, everyone in the other worlds has their own souls, and at this time, an inexplicable fear arises deep in their souls. Time is only a few breaths away, and everyone seems to have experienced a catastrophe. When everyone recovered, no one knew what was going on. The movement in the God realm finally made the Lord God regain his consciousness. He withdrew his divine power and looked angrily at the dilapidated God realm. Ziwei, what should this Lord God do to you? The Lord God's hand was almost crushed by his own. Lord God, what happened? The 4 emperors discovered that the initiator was actually Lord God. They hurried over and knelt down in front of Lord God. No, you all go down. The Lord God waved his hand and said gloomily. Yes, subordinates, please leave. The 4 emperors breathed a sigh of relief and hurried down to restore the divine realm. My God, Lord God's strength is unfathomable. Emperor Dongyang wiped the non-existent Han on his forehead and sighed. Compared with Lord God, his strength was still far behind. Be more honest from now on and don't have any thoughts that you shouldn't have any more. The Antarctic Emperor said, yes, I have never seen the Lord God take action. Daijun Zimen nodded with a faint look in his eyes. Daijun Baikan was thinking about what made the Lord God so angry. He would not be good after this, and it would cost a lot of divine stones. He is the poorest among the 4 emperors, and he is the most unlucky for the Lord God's anger. Yuan didn't know that the God realm had suffered because of her. At this moment, Yu Heiran and the others had already caused a thunder tribulation to overcome the tribulation, and her thoughts were not on the Lord God. After they have overcome the disaster, Yu Heiran no longer focuses on developing family strength. After this time, everyone realizes that their own strength is very important. So everyone took their families to say goodbye to Yuan Mujukan. Yu Heiran was the first to say, Xiao Sier, let's say goodbye. The eldest brother plans to travel around this world and devote himself to improving his cultivation. Strength is the king. He looked at Yu Haoshan and the others and said, you will be the same from now on. See you in the fairy world. Brother and sister-in-law, let's see you in the fairy world. Yu Hao and his brothers nodded. Okay, everyone, take care, Mom, Uncle Bai, Uncle, Grandpa Mu, you all take care, we'll go first. Yu Heiran cupped his hands towards everyone and disappeared with his wife and children in his arms. Yuan watched them leave. This is very good. From now on, let them cultivate the world of immortality here. There is no future for that world of immortality. It is over. Everyone, take care. Brothers Yu Hao also left. Master, I'm leaving too. Wu Sheng bowed to Yuan, said to everyone to take care, and then left. Xiao Sier, it's time for us to leave. Dabao and Erbao wake up and send a message to tell mother Mrs. Feng took Yuan's hand and said, "Okay, mom, take care of yourself." Yuan smiled and nodded. "Good." Bai Zi took his family and bowed to everyone and walked away. After that came Feng Yuan's family, then Shitu's family, and finally Mr. Mu. "Grandpa, are you leaving too?" Mu Jukan asked. "Well, Grandpa likes someone, so you don't have to worry." Mr. Mu patted Mu Jukan, then patted the divine clothes on his body, nodded to the two of them, and teleported away. Wan and Mu Jukan were the only two people left on the spot. "Wanner, let's go too." "Good." The two of them naturally went to the fairyland. After the two came to the immortal world, they settled down in a city, and then they learned about this world of immortality. The promotion in this world of cultivating immortals is the same. The divine realm governs the fairy world, the fairy realm governs the big world governs the small world, and below the small world is the mortal world. But compared to the level of immortality cultivation, this world of immortality cultivation is at a higher level. The reason is probably that this world is richer in spiritual energy and fairy energy than in the previous world of cultivating immortals. Yuan and the two practiced like the monks here. They went into the mountains to dig out fairy medicine and hunt fairy beasts to exchange for fairy stones for practice. In their spare time, they went into the space to add some divine soul liquid to the two treasures. Perhaps it was because Yuan had no worries and was in a good mood. Within a year, her cultivation reached the great perfection of the Mahayana period. Yuan decided to ascend normally to the spirit world, because one advantage of normal ascension is that there is a spirit washing pool at the reception platform. End of this chapter. The Brave Life of a Space Peasant Girl. Author, Lan Department. Chapter 534. Chapter 534 Tower of Babel. The benefit of washing the spirit pool is that it allows her body to cleanse the menstrual marrow again. Such opportunities are rare. "Wanner, let me go with you." "No need, just practice hard." "Okay, be careful and come back when you get to the fairy world." Yuan kissed Mu Jukan on the face and said a brief farewell. She entered the space and asked the small world to send her to a big world called Yunkai. After arriving, Yuan entered a city and bought a map. Tower of Babel. Yuan saw a tower drawn in the center of the map, labeled Babel Tower. Yuan was curious and asked Xiaoji to take her to see it. She had been to so many worlds and had never seen one with a tower marked on the map, so naturally she wanted to go and see it. Yuan came out 100 miles away from the Babel Tower and flew over. I met many people on the road and learned from their conversations that I don't know when the Tower of Babel was here, let alone who put it here. The Tongtian Tower is divided into 9 levels, corresponding to the realm of cultivation. According to them, as long as you can reach the 9th level and pass the test of the 9th level, you can ascend to the fairy world. But another possibility is that if he fails to pass, the person's end will be to lose his soul. Only the 9th floor is like that. If the other 8 floors cannot be passed, it will still be teleported out. After hearing this, Yuan found it very interesting and decided to give it a try to see if she could pass. In addition, they said that any level in the Tower of Babel can only be overcome by one's own strength, which means that one cannot rely on the strength of Little Snake and Dehe. When Yuan approached, he saw many monks from the combined stage and the Mahayana stage entering it. She did not go in immediately, but stood aside and watched. There are really many high-level powerful people in Yunkai continent. Yuan stood outside with a stick of incense, and a dozen Mahayana monks entered. She also heard that although Yunkai continent has rich spiritual energy and everyone practices quickly, there are not many people who can truly ascend. As for the reason, it is unknown. In short, there are many monks who are stuck in the great perfection of the Mahayana stage, but few of them break through the last barrier and ascend to the immortal world. Yuan smiled after hearing this. There are laws for everything, and the speed of cultivation is very fast. She also wants everyone to ascend to the immortal world. There is more than just this big world below the immortal world, and it is so easy to ascend. Then the immortal world will not be overcrowded. The consequence of overcrowding is that there are not enough cultivation resources. Everyone will fight for the cultivation resources, kill people for money, or overexploit the cultivation resources, causing the resources in this world to be exhausted, and eventually this world will become a mortal world. So every realm is guarded by the heavenly Deo, and there is also the Lord God above the heavenly Deo. How can we let everyone soar up unscrupulously and destroy the order of each realm? Yuan saw that it was almost done, so she followed the others into the Babel Tower. Each monk who enters the Babel Tower must throw enough spiritual stones into a container on each floor. For this floor, 1,000 low-grade spiritual stones will be thrown into it. Yuan guessed that these spiritual stones were for the operation of the Tower of Babel. After Yuan invested 1,000 low-grade spiritual stones, she stood there motionless. The teleportation array teleported her into the tower in one breath. Institutions. Before she could stand still, a golden ball of light, more than 10 feet in size, came towards her with shining golden light. In an instant, the golden ball of light swayed and transformed into a giant golden owl flying towards her with its mouth wide open. The giant owl seemed very excited when he saw Yuan. It raised its head to the sky and swooped down towards Yuan. Yuan waved her hand, holding the divine sword in her hand. She raised her sword in a flash to face the giant owl. Whoops! A ray of light flashed toward the giant owl's mouth. Bah! The spiritual light flashed across the giant owl's open beak, and the giant owl's beak was split into two. The giant owl felt pain, changed its way and rushed towards the sky. When it flew back, it returned to its previous appearance, ferocious. He pecked at Yuan. Huh? You can't kill him yet, Yuan was shocked. She had used 70% of her spiritual energy for that sword. The first level corresponds to the Qi training period when she entered, her cultivation was suppressed in the Qi training period, and so on. Do I have to use fire spiritual power to destroy it? Is this first level of test actually a test of the control of spiritual power? Thinking of this, Yu Wangxing stepped up, dodged to the other side, and immediately used the magic weapon to separate the fire spiritual power. When the fire spiritual power reached the fingertips, Yuan poured the fire spiritual power into the divine sword, then stepped in front of the giant owl with star steps, and swung it at it with all his strength. Boom! The fire spirit power blasted towards a golden ball spit out by the giant owl. The two collided, and the fire spirit power immediately wrapped around the golden ball. Not long after, the giant golden ball was burned up, and the giant golden owl seemed to have lost weight, becoming much smaller. Yuan took a look and immediately understood that this giant golden ball was also transformed by the energy of the giant owl. If part of it was burned, its body would of course shrink. So Yuan mobilized the fire spiritual power to attack the giant owl again. The giant owl became smaller after being attacked again and again, and its attack power was greatly reduced. Within an hour, Yuan captured the giant owl. However, she was also very tired, and all the spiritual energy in her body was exhausted. She quickly sat down and swallowed a pill to replenish her spiritual power. As expected, a test related to the wood element appeared below. She does not have metal spiritual roots, and the conversion process takes time. This will be a good practice. I don't usually use it to convert spiritual power, so I'm just trying to make it through this temporarily. She, a Mahayana monk, was beaten out on the first floor. That would be ridiculous. About that time, Yuan stood up and walked out. This place was just an open space with sand on the ground. As she walked, a forest appeared. She didn't leave because she knew what would happen soon. Sure enough, after a while, all the plants in the forest started to move. They raised their branches and attacked Yuan. Yuan's feet are moving with stars, and the golden spiritual power is emitting from her hands. The sound of Shushua sounded immediately. The golden blade she sent out broke all the branches and vines. Those branches and vines grew rapidly again after being chopped off, and their attack became even more fierce. As Yuan's golden spiritual power transformed, it became faster and smoother. The golden spiritual power rotates with the branches and vines flying all over the sky. It looks murderous from a close look. From a distance, it looks like a person dancing fast among the green silk and willow waves. It is beautiful and moving. 2 hours later, Yuan collapsed on the ground and gasped for air. After exhausting her physical strength and spiritual energy, she uprooted the tree and ended the battle. This battle was hardy and hardy. It has been a long time since I fought with my own strength. Such battles are undoubtedly the best way to improve your skills. After just 2 battles, her magic fighting skills have at least doubled. Yuan is very glad that she came here. Her magic has always been a shortcoming, but there is such a place for her to practice here. I'm really grateful to the person who placed the Tower of Babel. End of this chapter. The Brave Life of a Space Peasant Girl. Author, Lan Department. Chapter 535. Chapter 535 Tower of Babel 1. The next is the water element test. She has earth spirit roots. This battle was not strenuous and ended in half an hour. After Yuan's spiritual power recovered as before, she faced the test of the fire element. This time what appeared in front of her was a fire phoenix. Yuan used the same method to deal with the giant owl and quickly captured the fire phoenix. The last one was the earth element. This time, it was no longer animals and plants that appeared, but a stone giant that appeared in front of her. The giant is 3 feet tall, and her body is only as big as her finger. This giant is tall, but not slow and powerful. Her divine sword can barely stick to the edge. An hour later, Yuan was panting from exhaustion, but the giant was still the same as before. Chasing after Yuan with punch after punch. With that punch, there was a big hole in the ground. The shock caused gravel to fly and dust to fly all over the sky, causing Yuan to eat a lot of dust. Boom! The giant slapped Yuan, who was a step too late, into the bare rocks. Click, snap. Yuan heard her bones break, and then fell to the ground. The bone is broken. Yuan grimaced in pain. She was so surprised. Her body refining skills had reached the 3rd level of the immortal level, and this giant actually broke her bones. The strength of this giant is only that of the Qi training stage, which is incredible. However, this thought only lasted a moment. Yuan endured the pain and rolled away quickly. She took star steps and narrowly avoided another attack from the giant. Yuan flashed in front of the giant's legs and fired several golden blades, hitting the giant's legs, and the giant's attack eased a bit. After succeeding with one blow, Yuan finally understood that it was useless to use the divine sword, but still had to use magic. She swallowed a few pills to replenish her spiritual power, and while absorbing them, she used star steps to deal with the giant. Yuan only fought back when the spiritual power in her body was enough to attack. In this way, the giant was eliminated after 2 hours. When the giant was scattered into a pile of broken stones, a black stone as big as a fist was exposed in the middle. Yuan was too tired to move her fingers at the moment, but the black stone seemed to be a soul crystal. She crawled over and took it in her hand to look at it carefully. Yes, it was the soul crystal, a soul crystal more advanced than the soul stone. Stone. It turns out that this giant is a puppet made of stone, no wonder, Yuan murmured. The puppet activated by the soul crystal is different from the puppet activated by the spirit stone. It has a certain level of sanity. A sane puppet can remember the tasks given to it by its master. No wonder this giant's speed and attack methods are the same as those of a monk. Whoops! There was a sound breaking through the air, and Yuan recognized a flying sword coming towards her. She ducked underground to avoid the attack, and then became invisible. Huh? Escaped. You're not slow to react, a female cultivator in white came immediately. She picked up the sword and pouted. Yuan quickly swallowed the pill underground. This female cultivator sneaked up on her, probably because she was interested in the soul crystal she had just obtained. Soul crystals are used to cultivate the divine soul, and their effects are almost the same as those of her divine soul liquid. It doesn't matter whether she exists or not, but she is a treasure to those monks. Yuan looked angrily at the female cultivator who was walking away, and waited until she recovered her spiritual power before settling the score with her. An hour later, Yuan emerged from the underground and walked forward. There must be a teleportation array to the second floor in front of her. After she walked out of the stone forest, there was indeed a magic weapon containing spiritual stones and a teleportation array standing in front of her. But the female nun in white has disappeared, she must have gone to the second floor. Yuan put 2,000 spiritual stones into the barrel-shaped magic weapon, and then stood on the teleportation array. After one breath, the teleportation array teleported her to the second floor. As soon as she reached the second floor, a giant beast opened its mouth and bit her. Yuan drew out the divine sword and rushed forward. For killing monsters and beasts, it's all a matter of monks. The monsters have nowhere to escape under her divine sword. This second level mainly tests personal practical experience. Although it is simple and crude, it is very demanding. Monks cannot be attacked by monsters, and will be teleported out immediately after being attacked. She witnessed with her own eyes that the female cultivator in white was photographed by a diamond bear. Deserve it? Yuan only sent her 2 words. At this level, those whose strength does not exceed the nascent soul stage and who have no fighting experience will all be beaten out. And taking one consecutive day as the time limit, less than half of the monks were left in the end. It was a high-intensity fight in one day, and even Yuan's pure spiritual power couldn't withstand such constant slashing. Due to lack of spiritual power in the middle of the test, she didn't know how many pills she swallowed to replenish her spiritual power before she could pass the test. Yuan finally understood why so many monks came here every day, as well as those powerful monks. Here they can really get all-round training. The third level of test is alchemy, and Yuan passed this test without any suspense. The fourth level is the weapon refining. Yuan said that she couldn't pass because she didn't recognize several ores. To find the ore you need among the many ores, you must know it. So Yuan had to identify the ore first. Although there is no encyclopedia of ores here for monks to refer to, any monk does not have a collection of all the arts of cultivating immortality, so he can still make a temporary reference. Yuan is the one who is just improvising. The weapon refining test is to be able to refine a spiritual treasure to pass. Of course, the Tower of Babel is very humane when refining weapons and will not suppress the monk's cultivation. Even so, I am afraid that there will be more people who will pass this level. Those monks who can reach the 9th floor are really rare. After Yuan completed the collection of spiritual minerals, he began to refine weapons. This is the same as the 3rd floor. There are countless refining rooms for the monks. You can just choose one. When you enter the refining room and start refining, you have entered a test. But there are also regulations. There are only 3 opportunities to refine each magic weapon. If it cannot be refined 3 times, or it is unqualified, the Babel Tower will automatically send the monks out of the tower. You don't have to worry about not having the materials for making weapons in the house, there are everything you need, you just need to do it. Yuan checked the cauldron and found that it was the same as the alchemy furnace below, both of which were at the Lingbao level. Yuan clicked her tongue a few times. The person who placed the Tower of Babel was quite generous. She is as rich as she is. It must be people from the fairy world who have this ability, in order to cultivate high-quality monks. After Yuan circled around, he sat down cross-legged and began to refine the weapon. All magical weapons are easy to refine, and Yuan and Xiao Zi quickly refined a top-quality magical weapon. As soon as the magic weapon comes out of the furnace, it disappears into thin air. Is this a success? After a while, she was still in the house, so it was considered a success. Then there are spiritual weapons. The spiritual weapon disappeared out of thin air as if it had just come out of the furnace. Then came the magic weapon, which Yuan succeeded in refining only after refining it for the second time. The last one is Lingbao. In fact, there are ancient treasures on top of Lingbao. Ancient treasures are Lingbao refined by ancient monks, commonly known as ancient treasures. Today's monks cannot refine them, and the Tower of Babel will not test them. The ancient treasure contains an immortal weapon, which can only be refined by an immortal, let alone tested. End of this chapter. You are listening to Novels at Bless Up channel. Wish you happiness and luck. Please subscribe to receive new novels. How do you feel about this novel? Please like and leave a comment. The Brave Life of a Space Peasant Girl. Author, Lan Department. Chapter 536. Chapter 536 Juhua Immortal Emperor. Thinking about this level, Yuan was not confident, and the possibility of failure was relatively high. However, she can still come in again if she fails. So Yuan began to refine the Lingbao flying sword that she was still refining. Flying swords are the easiest to refine among all magic weapons. As she thought, the refining failed 3 times and was teleported out of the Tower of Babel. When she opened her eyes and stood firm and found that she was in the forest, she smiled. This Tower of Babel is really very humane. The teleportation is also random. Others will not know how many floors you have reached and will not worry about running out of spiritual power. Some monks were robbing. Yuan took a deep breath. Although the test in the Tower of Babel was harsh, her gains were not small. She learned all the skills of cultivating immortality that she had not learned before. Especially her magic. As the saying goes, having many skills does not overwhelm the body. The road to immortality is long and long. It is not bad to find something to do in this boring cultivation. Maybe it will be useful one day. This time Yuan did not rush to break into the Babel Tower, but slipped into the space to make amends. The tests on the 6th and 7th levels should be about talismans and formations. The talismans are okay, which is her strength, but the formation can be said to be a combination of 7 apertures and 6 apertures. Yuan went to see her sons first. Their souls were almost restored, and it would probably take them a few days to wake up. Seeing her sons like this, Yuan felt very uncomfortable. Her good and handsome son was tortured like this by the 1,000 swordsmen, and she wanted to skin that Lord God. Yuan gently touched the faces of the 2 children and said softly, "Dabao and Erbao, mother will definitely avenge you." Yuan fed them some divine soul liquid and sat there for a long time before returning to the training room. Took out the 3 storage spaces that I had taken out from that man Shang Shen. All 3 of them were simple in appearance, and they were not ordinary at first glance. She picked up a piece of divine consciousness and entered it. After reading it, she couldn't help but want to laugh. As expected, they were all filled with artifacts, divine pills, and divine stones. The piles of treasures dazzled her. The Lord God is the Lord God. It is estimated that the most precious and cherished things in the entire world are with him. It can only be said that he is arrogant. If such a precious thing is placed in a storage space, is there no one here to stroke his beard? They say that a cunning rabbit only has 3 burrows. He is worse than a rabbit. The 2nd dimension ring contained mostly his daily necessities, which she planned to sell in the God realm in the future. It's a pity to throw away the things that man used. She can sell a lot of sacred stones. Anyway, one day she will be able to use the sacred stones. Wouldn't it be delicious instead of the sacred stones? The third one turned out to be the small space where Yu Heiran and the others were imprisoned. There was also the building of Juya Trading Company inside. Ha ha ha. Yuan laughed happily. This time the Lord lost his wife and his troops. The whole family's fortune was taken care of by him. There are a lot of things in this small space, and they are all exquisite. Fortunately, they escaped. If he had been caught, he would have died miserably. However, this small space can give you two treasures. Although the level is not as high as her space, it is still a life space and can save lives in critical moments. Yuan found a top-quality artifact to protect the soul and replace the one in the sea of consciousness. Even if her body is destroyed in this way, her spirit will still be there and she will not die. Of course the space is invisible in her soul, and the world gate is also in the space. This ensures nothing goes wrong. She will not be placed outside like the Lord God. Yuan took out all the jade slips and other items collected by the Lord God and put them in a separate place. They wouldn't use them now. They would take a look at them when they need them later. When all his things were sorted, he started to refine weapons and learn formations. The formation will definitely be tested, and what she needs most is these jade slips for cultivating immortals and various arts. In the fairy world, Mujukan just came back from outside that day, and his neighbor next door, the immortal Yeju, came to see him. "Immortal Jukan, are you there?" Mujukan saw that it was him in his consciousness, so he opened a formation to let him in. "Is the immortal Yeju so free today?" Mujukan motioned for him to sit down and immediately poured him tea. The immortal who lives far away usually comes here to have tea when he has free time. The tea comes from Wana's space, has a great taste, and also contains immortal power. Because of this, the two families became friends. The Taoist couple Fairy Furong and Yuan who live far away from the fairy are also considered good friends. They usually go out hunting and collecting fairy medicine together as two families. Fairy Furong is a beautiful and gentle person. She has never disliked Yuan, who is not yet a fairy. She likes her very much and treats her like her sister. Yuan also secretly likes this gentle fairy sister. It is a pity that they have no children. Yuan Chang lamented that if they had a child, based on their good looks, the child they would give birth to would be so magnificent. However, in Yuan's heart, no other child can be as good as her son. Yeju sat down and took a sip of tea and sighed, "People in our realm have a lot of free time. Hey, where are my brothers and sisters?" She went into seclusion to prepare for a breakthrough. "Oh, it's time for a breakthrough. By the way, the Juhua Immortal Emperor is holding an auction in his Juhua Palace. Do you want to go and take a look?" Juhua Palace. Mujukan knew that the Juhua Immortal Emperor was a loose immortal who had a good reputation. He had nothing to do anyway, so he might as well go and have a look. "Are you going to?" Immortal Yeju nodded. "My cultivation has been stuck in the middle stage of immortality for too long recently. Let's go and see if we can take pictures of immortal objects that can help us break through." The immortal Yeju didn't hide it either. He knew that Mujukan was a rare person with good character. "Okay, you can call me when the time comes." "Can." The two of them drank tea for a long time before they parted ways. On the third day, the couple who lived far away came to call Mujukan. Mujukan packed up and followed the two of them to fly towards Juhua Immortal Palace. Arrived outside the fairy palace, the little fairy welcomed the three of them in. The three of them went into the main hall and took a look around. They saw that there were many people coming, including several immortal emperors and immortal kings. The three of them sat down at a table in the corner. Mujukan looked at it like a palace banquet, not an auction. Of course, it was his first time seeing this kind of event, and he didn't know if it was an auction. As soon as they sat down, fairies brought them fairy fruits and poured fairy wine. Mujukan smelled the fairy brew, and the taste was incomparable to Wana's brew. The same goes for those fruits. Anyone he took out from his storage space would look better than these. The couple who lived far away saw that Mujukin didn't move, and they didn't move either. The three of them just sat quietly and waited. More people came one after another to the main hall, and when it was almost full, an immortal wearing a purple gold crown and a handsome appearance flew over. Many fairies' eyes were straightened. What a handsome Juhua immortal emperor! Even Fairy Furong took a second look. He flew to the main seat, stood there and glanced at the main hall, then closed the hall door with a wave of his hand. End of this chapter. The Brave Life of a Space Peasant Girl. Author, Lan Department. Chapter 537. Chapter 537 Nine-Tailed Fox. Mujukin frowned when he saw this. Master, be careful, I think this person is weird at this time. Nanming Liwo sent a message to Mujukin. Mujukin also felt that this man was not like the one in the legend. Mujukin caught the flash of his sinister eyes. This man definitely has bad intentions. He immediately sent a message to Yeju. Yeju, be careful, this Juhua immortal emperor is not simple. Yeju waved his hand to him and sent a message to him. Jukin, you are thinking too much. Mujukin frowned. He glanced at the distant couple and saw them looking at the Juhua immortal emperor with smiles and joy in their eyes. Wrong. Mujukin immediately looked at the others, and saw that the others were looking at the Juhua immortal emperor with smiling eyes. Psychedelic. Mujukin suddenly thought that his soul was protected by the soul-protecting bell, so it was not subject to hallucinations. Mujukin felt sad. He didn't know what the Juhua immortal emperor was going to do. He, a little immortal, was no match for the Juhua immortal emperor, and he had no ability to break his illusion. Now we can only remain unchanged and cope with the ever-changing situation. Mujukin remained calm next, wanting to see what the Juhua immortal emperor wanted to do. Anyway, it was not as simple as holding an auction. After Juhua immortal emperor glanced at everyone, he nodded with satisfaction and waved to the fairy holding a tray below. The fairy nodded and came up, walked to the auction table that had been placed earlier, put the box away and said, "Dear fairies and fairies, welcome everyone to participate in this auction organized by our immortal emperor. I will preside over it today. It's still the same old rules. Those who don't have enough fairy stones can barter." Mujukin watched quietly from below. The presiding fairy was chattering in front of the stage, but the Juhua immortal emperor was sitting cross-legged on the main seat. Like practicing? Yes, isn't it that every time you breathe in and out, you are absorbing something to cultivate? Mujukin was puzzled. What did Juhua immortal emperor absorb here to practice, and who would practice in public? It's really strange. There seemed to be nothing wrong with the immortals and fairies below. They all stretched their necks to listen to the explanation of the presiding fairy above. The only difference is that all the fairies and fairies here really like this scene. Looking like they were intoxicated, Mujukin knew that they were all under an illusion. Since there was nothing abnormal for the time being, he couldn't make any more noise. He also looked at the presiding fairy on the stage, but he still used a trace of consciousness to pay attention to the Juhua immortal emperor who was practicing with his eyes closed. This auction lasted for 7 days in total, and there were no accidents in the middle. When everyone flew out of Juhua immortal palace, everyone felt exhausted. Only Mujukin did not feel tired. Yeju immortal patted his head and asked, "Jukin, why didn't you take a picture of anything?" Mujukin said, "There is nothing worth seeing. There are not so many immortal stones that are worth seeing." Yeju, when will the Juhua immortal emperor hold such an auction? Fairy Furong didn't look good. She said, "Why do Jukin ask that? Do you see any problem?" Mujukin only said, "Let's talk about it after we go back." The two nodded to him, and the three of them left quickly. In the Juhua immortal palace, the Juhua immortal emperor stood up with satisfaction, his consciousness fixed on Mujukin. "Congratulations, master, for your advancement in cultivation." The presiding fairy greeted him with a blessing, and threw herself into the arms of the Juhua Immortal Emperor with a sweet smile. The Juhua Immortal Emperor smiled, hugged the hostess and disappeared. Mujukan and the other three returned to their residence, and the couple who lived far away followed him back to the courtyard without even taking a rest. Mujukan activated the formation and then asked the two of them to sit down. "Jukan, tell me quickly, have you discovered anything?" Yeju asked impatiently. "It's not like he doesn't have eyes." The couple seemed to have exhausted their energy after a great battle. Looking at Mujukan, he was in high spirits and not at all like them. They don't believe it now that Juhua Immortal Emperor did nothing to them. Mujukan said calmly, "You are not talking nonsense. I told you at the beginning, but you didn't listen. You try your blood, and then you see your cultivation. We've seen it before, eh? No, why is my spirit a little smaller?" Yaoju suddenly discovered. "Isn't that right? The Juhua Immortal Emperor is not a human immortal at all. He is a fox immortal, a nine-tailed fox immortal, transformed from a fox. Is the auction he holds open often? And every time people who go there come back it's all like this and you still don't know what it is. At least he has a golden dragon, a mythical beast. He doesn't have the ability to recognize it, but the golden dragon can." Golden Dragon told him that it was the magical power of the nine-tailed fox, a god-eating technique that every nine-tailed fox knew. It specialized in absorbing the essence and spirit of immortals for them to practice. As soon as the fairies entered his fairy palace, they fell into the illusion of the nine-tailed fox clan. This illusion is very harmful. Only immortals with powerful souls or people like Mujukan who have artifacts to protect their souls will not fall prey to it. It's just that this nine-tailed fox is smart and invites more immortals on the pretext of holding an auction, and each of them a little bit. This way, it will not attract anyone's attention and it will last a long time. An immortal dies from time to time. Do you think the immortal emperors are vegetarians? And the things he put up for auction were indeed good goods. No matter how good the product is, it is of no use to the nine-tailed fox clan, so he has been practicing in this way for a long time. Every time, even if an immortal finds something wrong, it will be fine in a few days and nothing will be lost. This small problem is not worth mentioning for the treasure that Juhua Immortal Emperor put up for auction." The two of them were shocked when they heard this. No wonder their cultivation levels were stuck on the ground. This Juhua Immortal Emperor holds it every 1 or 2 years, and the couple also went there. Thinking about it now, there was only cold sweat on the two people's backs. Fortunately, the Juhua Immortal Emperor only breathed some energy and did not kill them. The two of them sighed and said that they would never go there again. They sat for a while and hurried back to recover. If they didn't recover, they would lose their rank. Mujukan stayed in seclusion all night. The Juhua Immortal Emperor not only blatantly sucked people's energy and spirit like this, he was afraid that he would not let go of these cities either. It was agreed to wait for Wanner here, otherwise he would just leave. In the space, Yuan was finally able to refine the spirit treasure. She left the space and came to the Babel Tower again. This time she passed smoothly. When she was teleported to the 5th floor, she saw a desert in front of her. There is a mountain in the distance, and there is a white lotus on the mountain, filled with spiritual energy. Yuan looked around, wondering if this level was a test of the formation. She just came up to have a look and then went back to study. So when she saw that this was a desert and there was a white lotus in the distance, Yuan first felt that this layer was testing the formation. That white lotus must be the formation I. As long as the white lotus was picked, the formation would be broken. What? End of this chapter. The Brave Life of a Space Peasant Girl. Author, Lan Department. Chapter 538. Chapter 538 Checks and Balances. Yuan took the first step carefully, and suddenly many sandmen emerged from the desert and attacked her with lightning speed. The maracas rushed towards her like a torrential rain from all directions and 360 degrees, and Yuan saw that she had nowhere to hide. She could only escape, and quickly escape to the ground with a movement of consciousness. But as soon as she escaped into the ground, the sand sank straight down again, and it seemed that it had to swallow her up. What's wrong? Yuan shouted in her heart. What method could she use to resolve it? Is it possible that he was beaten out before he even took action? Forget it, stay invisible first. As soon as Yuan disappeared, the sand immediately stopped. Huh, that's true, Yuan exhaled before escaping from the ground, and the ground stopped at this time. It seems that the person who set it up will activate the formation as long as he can sense someone. Yuan looked thoughtfully at the white lotus in the distance. She slowly walked over and flew to the top of the mountain. Yuan leaned over and looked at the white lotus as big as a basin carefully. There was no color in the whole body, it was crystal clear and emitted a strong aura. It is impossible to tell whether this is a real white lotus or a fake white lotus. Yuan stretched out her finger and poked Balian. As soon as he touched it, the big white lotus turned into a puff of smoke and disappeared. Then Yuan felt that the surrounding space was distorted, and the scene changed in an instant, from desert to grassland. At a glance, Yuan could not help but swallow her saliva at the plump elixir trees on the grassland. It would be great if this was not a fantasy. She just recovered from her eye addiction and used her spiritual consciousness to see where the formation eyes were. It's a pity that except for the elixir, there is really no obvious mark of the formation eye anywhere. Yuan stared, how to find the formation? Is this the rhythm that wants her to pull out elixirs or weeds? After watching it for a long time, Yuan had no choice but to accept her fate. She knew nothing about the formation. Just pull it out, it's better than using these elixirs to attack her. In any case, the focus on customizing formations is cheating. So Yuan began her journey of digging for medicine and pulling weeds. It's true that as long as she doesn't show up, these grasses and elixirs will be obedient to her. As soon as she shows up, these grasses and elixirs will immediately change their faces and attack her. It's the same as over there in the desert, with no chance of parrying. Just waiting to be beaten and then sent out of the Tower of Babel. Yuan only tried it briefly and quickly stopped, it was too fierce. She had no choice but to finish pulling out the elixir obediently. She didn't know how long it took. When the last one was pulled out, the space twisted a few times after a click-click sound, and the scene changed again. Yuan looked at the fairyland-like space and didn't know what to do. Looking at the fairy spirit, the fragrance of flowers and the chirping of birds, the pavilions, bridges, and flowing water, it is so beautiful that I feel like I want to stay here forever. But she did not ignore the terrifying murderous intention. The strong murderous aura is in sharp contrast to this fairyland. Yuan didn't know how to break it, so she had to use her magical power of fire. She pinched it with both hands, and 2 fire phoenixes flew out from her palms. Boom! 2 fire phoenixes turned into 2 fireballs in the blink of an eye, rolling in this fairyland-like space. Everywhere he passed instantly turned into a sea of fire. The raging fire burned down this fairyland-like space. After the fire was extinguished, the fairyland turned into a hell, with bones all over the mountains and plains. It was like piles of bones. Yuan was in a daze. She withdrew the 2 flames and felt chills running down her spine as she looked at the corpses on the ground. These are real mountains of corpses, not illusions. Yuan kicked the bones at his feet, and the bones rolled and made a sound. It simply subverted her outlook on life. At first, Yuan was grateful to the person who placed the Tower of Babel, but now, Yuan's heart feels cold. These people all died in the illusion that was just like a fairyland. She did not fall into it. One of them was invisible to her, and the other one was protected by a divine weapon, so she was not affected. Yuan took a long breath. It turns out that this is using the Tower of Babel to consume the monks in this world. Haha, it is really ruthless. It is estimated that all the monks who could not break through this layer will die here. The people who were teleported out on the fourth layer are all good people, and no one will think that this layer will let you die here. Yuan sighed, and she used Xiao Zi to burn all the bones. Then after a patch of rain, only black soil can be seen in this space. After finishing, Yuan sat there quietly. She was not in the mood to go to the Babel Tower above, so she simply left the Babel Tower. Master, just put the tower into the space and it will be over. Xiaoji felt the master's mood and said. Ifir. Yuan immediately denied it. The Tower of Babel was not from this world, and she couldn't meddle in such matters. There is some logic in putting it here. What is the situation of being a holy mother? There are some things that you don't just have to take care of. There is a price to pay for taking care of them. There are too many monks in this world, and this is a check and balance method adopted by some. The number of people cultivating immortals can only decrease but not increase. After Yuan figured it out, she felt as if she was suddenly enlightened, and she no longer felt so uncomfortable in her heart. This can be considered a test of state of mind. Yuan found a place to enter the space. Mother, as soon as she entered the space, two treasures flew towards her. You're awake, are you feeling unwell? Yuan saw her son. He had no worries at all. His son could cure everything. Very good, Liangbao said with a smile. Not only was he in good health, but he was also very good at being able to see his mother alive. Yuan held her son by the hand, and her spiritual consciousness circled around them. They were indeed healed. It was my mother who hurt you this time. Yuan touched her son's face. She would rather have something happen to herself than to her sons. They are her and Mujukin's lives. Mom, aren't we doing well now? Mom, there is no need to blame yourself. We will work hard to practice in the future. Only when we stand at the top of the world will no one be able to hurt us. Dabao held Yuan's hand and said firmly. Yuan breathed a sigh of relief, smiled gently at her sons and said, Mom, I believe in you. When you wake up now, do you want to see your father or practice in the spirit world first? Then Yuan told Liangbao that they had left that world of cultivating immortals and were now in the other world of cultivating immortals. Bao was happy and curious after hearing this. Bao said, Mom, let's go back and see Daddy first. Father loves them as much as mother does. He must have been worried to death when they were in a coma. Well, let's go back and take a look first. Liangbao nodded. Yuan immediately controlled the gate to return to the yard of the fairy world, and then the mother and son left the space. Mujukin saw with his spiritual consciousness that it was their mother and son, and he quickly shot out. Wan'er, Dabao, Bao. Mujukin hugged the mother and son tightly. Dad, I've made you worry. Dabao choked up a little. God knows how much they missed their parents when they were being tortured by the Lord God. End of this chapter. You are listening to Novels at Bless Up channel. Wish you happiness and luck. Please subscribe to receive new novels. How do you feel about this novel? Please like and leave a comment. The Brave Life of a Space Peasant Girl. Author, Lan Department. Chapter 539. Chapter 539 Thunder Tribulation. It's okay, Mujukin gently stroked Liangbao's back, speaking in a rare gentle voice. The two treasures had enough enjoyment in Mujukin's arms before giving up their position to Yuan. How are you doing lately? Yuan asked her when Mujukin carried Yuan back to the house. I haven't even gone out. We will leave here when you come back. Oh, what happened? Well, the Ninhua Immortal Emperor here is a nine-tailed fox immortal. Mujukin told him about going to Juhua Immortal Palace. There is still such a thing. What about Furong and the others? Yuan was still worried when she heard that her friend had been sucked away. In severe cases, her foundation would be affected. They had nothing to do and left after recovering. Oh, We don't have to leave, just go and collect that stinky fox at night, Yuan said softly. Now she can even come and go freely in the divine world, let alone the fairy world. She can't take away the Tower of Babel in the lower realm, but this stinky fox can do it. You want to take him as a spiritual pet? Mujukan thought of the appearance of the nine-tailed fox and was a little bit disgusted. What should I use it for? Yuan glanced at him. There were many divine beasts in the divine world. What's more, she has no plans to accept any more spiritual pets. He Mujukan laughed a few times, turned over and pressed Yuan under him. It was night. Yuan took Mujukan into the space, controlled the realm gate and headed towards Juhua Immortal Palace. At this time, in the Juhua Immortal Palace, the Juhua Immortal Emperor was sitting cross-legged. He was pinching his hands, his lips were lightly opened, and a series of unintelligible notes spilled out of his mouth. That strange note floated out of Juhua Immortal Palace like a string of beating characters, floated to places with people, and floated to the sky above the city, forming a beautiful melody that accompanied people into dreamland. As people exhaled and inhaled, wisps of smoke-like things floated out, drifting straight to Juhua Immortal Palace. The Juhua Immortal Emperor greedily absorbed the silky smoke. Yuan saw the scene clearly in front of the boundary gate. She looked at the Juhua Immortal Emperor in disgust, and with a flick of her consciousness, the figure of the Juhua Immortal Emperor disappeared out of thin air. At the same time, in front of the little snake, a snow-white nine-tailed fox stared at the little snake warily. The little snake moved its mouth, and a poisonous arrow shot into the eye of the nine-tailed fox. Ah! The nine-tailed fox let out a shrill scream, fell to the ground, twitched a few times, and died. The little snake glanced at the corpse of the nine-tailed fox with disgust, and threw the corpse to the black earth with a burst of magical power. After a while, nothing was left. No, there is nothing left in the body, but there are still 2 space rings on the ground. The little snake took them away and threw them into the treasure pavilion. Anyway, the things to sort out are still the matters between it and Dehe. After Yuan saw that the smelly fox was dead, she took Mujukan into Juhua Immortal Palace, killed all the foxes inside, drove away all the human monks, and then took over Juhua Immortal Palace. It can be used by Yuhairan and others in the future. There is no such thing as waste in front of her. In short, even waste can have value. Mujukan lamented that Wanner had dealt with an immortal emperor so simply and crudely, and they could only hide. After packing everything up, Yuan Ke took Liang Bao to the spiritual world, the world where Fengshi lived. She remembered that Fengshi had told her that Liang Bao would tell her when he woke up. The Feng family settled in a small town. They had not developed any family influence and were all focused on cultivation. The mother and son settled in as soon as they arrived and stayed with Mrs. Feng for a few days before the mother and son said goodbye. I went to see Mr. Mu again. Mr. Mu couldn't help crying when he saw the 2 treasures. Now he only has these 2 precious great-grandsons, and nothing can happen to him anymore. The possibility of having a child with the cultivation of his grandson and grandson's wife is very small, so these 2 babies are the hope of his old Mu family. Mom, we want to stay with my great-grandfather. Dabao saw that Mr. Mu was too lonely, so he discussed it with Bao, and the 2 brothers made a decision. Old man Mu has 2 treasures to stay with him, of course he is willing. Okay, just take good care of your great-grandfather, Yuan said and gave Dabao the space he took from Shang Shen. This is up to you 2 brothers. Okay, we get it. Dabao took it. Then the mother left. Okay, mother, take care. Liang Bao waved to Yuan and sent her out of sight. Yuan did not leave this world, but traveled around it. She felt that she was not far from ascending. There is still a barrier that cannot be broken. Yuan knows that it is not because of insufficient cultivation or lack of spiritual power, but because of the lack of baptism of the state of mind. In other words, the state of mind is still a little warm, and there are some things that have not been experienced before that need to be experienced. So there is no shortcut in the journey of cultivation. Even if you quickly increase your cultivation level in the small space of that man like God, your life experience will still be empty. In other words, it is impossible to reach human immortality in the 100 days given by that man from God. Now that I think about it, I am extremely scared. The consequences will be very serious. That dog man is very poisonous. But that has become a thing of the past. Yuan shrugged and stepped into the world. Time flies, and 100 years pass by quietly. In the past 100 years, Yuan has been traveling around the world, seeing all kinds of things in the world. At this moment, Yuan felt as if all her beauty had been washed away. Almost Yuan secretly thought in her heart, looking at the spiritual power that was so thick that it was almost overflowing, she flew to an uninhabited mountain peak, set up the spirit gathering array, covered it with spiritual stones, and then sat cross-legged in the center of the array. Close your eyes, take a deep breath, and start to run the star art. As soon as the technique is turned, the mist-like spiritual energy in the formation pours into Yuan's body. After a long time, there was a clear click sound in Yuan's consciousness, followed by a buzzing sound inside her body, which seemed to resonate with the continent. Suddenly, dark clouds came over the sky, and thunder and lightning flashed fiercely. Yuan seemed not to feel the coming of the calamity thunder. She still closed her eyes and ran the technique. The spiritual energy absorbed into the body washes over the dantian and meridians. Suddenly, a spirit washing flower appeared in front of Yuan. She opened her mouth and swallowed the spirit washing flower. Yuan has not taken the spirit washing flower before. This is the time she has been waiting for. When the calamity thunder comes down and uses the power of thunder and lightning to refine her body, she can also wash her spirit at the same time, which can make her spiritual roots purer and purer. Kaka. At this moment, 9 tribulation thunders descended one after another, and Yuan quickly changed it to Xingju. When the power of thunder and the medicinal effect of the spirit washing flower reached the dantian at the same time, a burst of cramping pain came, which caught Yuan off guard. It hurt so much, it was the worst pain she had ever endured in her life. Yuan bit her lip as she worked on the technique, and saw strands of black hair overflowing from her dantian and floating out of her body. Yuan saw it and smiled with difficulty. It was really painful and happy. Just as she thought, the impurities in her spiritual roots were washed out. End of this chapter. The Brave Life of a Space Peasant Girl. Author, Lan Department. Chapter 540. Chapter 540 Ascension. Unsurprisingly, her cultivation speed will speed up in the future, but the amount of immortal power required will also be huge. This is not important. What is important is that in the future, her immortal power will be twice as pure as that of the same level. She can definitely challenge beyond the level. For Yuan, the power of thunder and calamity from the sky is not her limit now. Even though the thunder and calamity comes down for free, she can still catch it. 5 days later, when the calamity thunder in the sky finally stopped falling, suddenly, the thunder and lightning like stone pillars in the sky transformed into countless 3-color thunder dragons and penetrated into Yuan's body. What is this? The brontosaurus that penetrated her body instantly turned into a small 3-color brontosaurus and wandered in her meridians. The violent power of the little thunder dragon almost burst her meridians. Yuan was startled, and she felt the power of running the technique. When the power reached her dantian was immediately widened, and something was vaguely forming in her dantian. Yuan was a little worried. She didn't know what kind of situation this was. This situation had never happened before when she was promoted. She wonders if she is transforming her pubic area. Just when she was puzzled, there was a sudden flash in the sky, and something like a stream of light rushed into her dantian. At this moment, her dantian was suddenly turbulent, like a storm approaching. Yuan opened her mouth wide and watched the changes in her dantian. After the storm passed, it slowly stopped and became clearer. Finally, the Danchan forms a starry sky, with stars dotted inside. Those three-color starlight spots are like stars twinkling in the vast starry sky. Bright and eye-catching, very beautiful. Yuan was shocked. How could her Danchan become like this? Buzz buzz. At this moment, the sound of fairy music suddenly sounded in the sky, and a beam of three-color light instantly shot down to cover her, lifting her up to the sky. Someone ascends. Many monks teleported from far-away places when they saw this scene. When the monks flew over, they all sat down cross-legged and closed their eyes to comprehend. This kind of once-in-a-lifetime opportunity rarely comes across. It is not that no one ascends in the spiritual world, but everyone is within their own sect or family, and there are very few casual cultivators who ascend outside. So everyone will not have bad intentions to destroy Yuan's ascension, but sit down and reflect on it. At this time, there are usually gifts from heaven, and some people may gain enlightenment and soar into the sky. Yuan also closed her eyes and comprehended, until a door of light appeared in the circle of light and sucked her in. The heavenly music and the circle of light disappeared at the same time. After Yuan entered the aperture, she still closed her eyes and maintained a meditating posture. At the same time, she felt a force sucking her upward. The speed was very fast, and there was no dizziness. Yuan knew that she was already in the ascension channel. Ahem, it's like taking an elevator, so stable. Yuan ascended for the first time, and she still sighed in her heart. I don't know how much time passed inside. It seemed like a long time, or just a short time. Phew, plop. Suddenly, Yuan was thrown out of the ascension channel by the force, and then was thrown into a milky white pool filled with fairy aura. So rude, Yuan thought in her mind and quickly absorbed the immortal energy to cleanse her soul. There were already 2 men and a woman in the pool, and they didn't react at all to her arrival. Yuan also closed her 5 senses and entered into deep spiritual cleansing. As soon as the immortal energy enters the body, the spiritual power in the body is expelled from the body, and this repeats. At this time, Yuan was like a sponge. A large amount of the immortal energy was sucked away by her. The other 3 people in the pool felt that the immortal energy inhaled into their bodies was much less. They opened their eyes and saw that it was Yuan's mission to absorb it. They all looked at her strangely. According to her method of inhalation, how could they wash their souls? So someone called an immortal on the reception platform. The immortal was an earthly immortal. He was shocked when he saw Yuan absorbing the immortal energy like this. He was afraid that the immortal energy in the pool would not be enough for her to absorb. Where did this freak come from? But he couldn't interrupt others while they were washing their souls. The consequences of being interrupted would be bad. He looked at the 3 people pitifully, knowing that they were unlucky. You just go back and wash her quickly. There is nothing I can do about her condition. Immortal Jiyin pointed at Yuan, who was wrapped in fairy energy like a white cocoon. The 3 of them had no choice but to go back and continue washing. Yuan had no idea how big an impact she had, she just absorbed it, the more, the better. It only made the 3 people miserable. If they had not just ascended and were watched by the immortal Jiyin, they would have killed Yuan long ago. 3 days later, Yuan's absorption of immortal power slowed down and then stopped. The spiritual washing is finally completed. Looking at the meridians and danchan in her body that are full of fairy energy, and the danchan is becoming more and more beautiful, Yuan is very satisfied. Whoops! Yuan's consciousness suddenly flashed in front of immortal Jiyin. Senior, Yuan gave a salute. Humph! The immortal snorted heavily at her. Yuan was puzzled. She was so polite and yet she was still humming. Why was she humming? Hand over 10,000 immortal stones, and then register to get the identity token, the immortal Jiyin said coldly. 10,000 immortal stones, Yuan was surprised. She had to pay for so many immortal stones to clean herself up. Is 10,000 immortal stones too much? Look at the spirit cleaning pond. Immortal Jiren was upset, so he just threw these 10,000 immortal stones in, and the spirit cleaning pond could recover at most 1/5. Fortunately, there is an immortal vein under the spirit cleansing pond, which can restore the spirit cleansing pond. Otherwise, the fairy would have to dig fairy mines for a lifetime to replenish so many fairy stones. Whispering Pool. Yuan's words were stuck in her throat, and her consciousness was washed by a pool of white water in the spiritual pool, but there was no fairy spirit left. Is it me? Yuan asked. Otherwise. I've never seen you absorb immortal energy like this before. Tisk tisk tisk, you inhale a lot. If you want to advance quickly in the future with your cultivation level, it's difficult to say a word. Hurry up and hand over the immortal stone. If you can't hand it over, I'll send you to mine to pay off your debt. The immortal Jian urged. Give. Yuan readily threw a small storage ring to the immortal Jian. She has a lot of fairy stones. However, she has been through so much. The immortal Jian took the storage ring and took a look. It was really an immortal stone inside. Suddenly, the expression in the eyes of immortal Jiying changed. If he hadn't seen with his own eyes that Yuan was a newly ascended monk, he would have suspected that she was the rich kid from the fairy world. Where did the monks in the lower world get the spiritual stones? There are so many immortal stones. I really don't dare to underestimate it. Name, from which world did you ascend? Yuan, who ascended from the Qianlong continent. Here the immortal Jian entered the information into the token and threw it to Yuan, then said, where do you want to go? There will be a spaceship passing by here every few days. Just go and wait outside. Then he waved his hand, and Yuan walked out of here and appeared in a wasteland. Yuan's consciousness swept over and saw that there was no one around. She entered the space in a flash and controlled the boundary gate to return to their small courtyard. End of this chapter.